singing songs of celebration for the light. And when the sun went down each evening, they sang other songs, sad songs, songs of missing the light of the sun. They loved the light so very much. They did not love the darkness. Once darkness fell every night, they would hurry to bed since they could only bear the darkness when they were asleep. Even then, total darkness was frightening to them, and so they always kept a fire burning in every room. The people's dearest wish was that the sun would not set in the evening, that darkness would never fall. But every day the sun set and they sang their sad songs, and they endured the fearful, sad, strange darkness until they could greet the sun again the next day. Now in this land there were born two remarkable children. They were twins. One was a girl, and she seemed to shine from within. Whenever she entered a room, everything seemed to get a little brighter, and the people loved her very much. The other was a boy, and he seemed to bring darkness with him. Whenever he entered a room, everything seemed a little dimmer, and the people did not like him. They feared him because he reminded them of the great darkness of the night. But although the people loved the girl and did not love the boy, the twins loved each other very much. Because the girl loved her brother so very much, the people mostly let him be, even though they were afraid of him. Now, as they grew, it became clear that these children were, in fact, magical children. The girl had the power to bring life back when it was harmed or lost. When she was a very small child, she could heal small cuts and bruises. When she grew a little older, she could heal broken bones and other larger hurts. And by the time she was a teenager, she could make the crops grow faster and larger and fuller. She could bring plants and animals that had died back to life, and the people suspected she could even bring people back to life, but they were afraid to ask, and she didn't offer. The boy, on the other hand, had the power to calm and quiet anything. When he was a very small child, he could help his family go to sleep more quickly, thus saving them from the fear of the darkness. When he was a little older, he could calm animals when they were frightened and make them still. And sometimes he would go first to an animal or a person who was hurt and help them be calm enough for his sister's healing magic to work. By the time he was a teenager, he could calm storms and winds and rain. He could bring anything to stillness. The people's love for the light and fear of the darkness only grew with time, perhaps more strongly with the twins always before them to remind them. And so one day they decided to ask the girl for a favor. They asked her to see if her magic could hold the sun in the sky and stop the night from coming. The girl was reluctant, but after many, many months of being asked, she finally decided to try, just to get the people to leave her alone. One day, just as the sun was at its highest point, she went out onto the top of the highest hill in the land, and she threw her arms up into the sky, and she asked the sun to stop, to stay right there at the top of the sky forever. She wasn't immediately sure that anything had happened. The sun usually moves so slowly. But before very long, it became clear that something had happened. The sun had stopped in the sky. The people were overjoyed. There was a big celebration. They sang all of their songs celebrating the sun. They loved the girl even more, at least at first. For the first week or so, everyone was happy and content. But soon, they began to get tired. Although they had always slept with a fire to ward off the darkness, sleeping in the full light of the sun was another thing altogether. They tossed and they turned and they woke up constantly. And some of them remembered that the boy could help with sleep and asked for his aid, but his power of bringing sleep seemed to have disappeared along with the darkness. So after about a month, the exhausted, frustrated people began to see that the constant sunlight was a problem. Though they still loved the light, they began to wish that the sun would once again move in the sky. Each person at first thought that they were the only one who thought this. And given the people's love of light and the fear of darkness, everyone was afraid at first to say anything about this growing longing for nighttime. But slowly, softly, as they began to confide in each other, they discovered that everyone felt this way. And they finally decided that something must be done. They went back to the girl and asked her to get the sun to move again. It was her magic that had stopped it, and they figured her magic could make it move again. So she went back up onto the top of the highest hill, threw her arms open to the sky, and asked the sun to move, and nothing happened. She tried again and a third time, but the sun just stayed still. Sadly, she turned to the people and told them there was nothing she could do. There was a long moment of growing panic before the boy stepped forward. "Let me try," he said softly. Everyone thought about it for a moment and then decided this was a good idea. So he took his sister's place on top of the highest hill, threw his arms up to the sky, and asked the sun to move. And the sun began moving at once, rushing toward the western horizon. Within 10 minutes, it had set, and within 15, it was full dark night. The people were caught off guard. They had all come to the hill to see if the girl's magic could work. They had no fires lit. They hadn't needed them in weeks. They had nothing with them to light their way. They had never been outside at night before, and they were terrified. At first, they tried rushing home to get away from the darkness, but they soon discovered that rushing when you can't see where you're going is a bad idea. So they slowed down, but still peered at the ground, trying to get home as soon as they could. But then one of them looked up. "Oh," she exclaimed, "look." Everyone looked up and they saw the stars for the very first time. They'd never been outside at night before and had no idea of the incredible beauty of a sky full of stars. They all stopped, hurrying toward their homes, and stood and stared in wonder. And then they realized how very tired they were, and so slowly now, and with more reverence, they started home again, and they all slept for a very long time. The people rested and were glad and appreciated the darkness for the first time in their lives. Eventually, the sun rose again, and as it did, the people got out of their beds and sang their songs to celebrate the coming of the light. But at the end of the day, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they did not feel like singing their sad songs. Instead, one of the musicians began singing a new song, a slow, quiet song of thanksgiving for the night. And soon the others joined in, and it became their new sunset song. And the boy and the girl grew up to be a man and a woman, and both of them were now much beloved by the people. Looking at them, still the best of friends as well as siblings, the people remembered that light and darkness are best when they are in balance. Now, winter solstice in the northern hemisphere officially begins at 5:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is about 17 and a half hours from now. We will experience the longest and the darkest nights of the year as the night triumphs over the light. And as we learn from our story, this is not something to be feared or avoided or ashamed of. The darkness is something to embrace with gratitude. It is an opportunity, a time, an invitation for healing and regeneration. In winter, everything lies dormant in the silent earth. All the seeds are waiting, and it's a sacred time of rest and reflection before the awakening and the slow build toward the brighter days. The energy of winter is that of going within. It's the fruitful darkness and silence out of which our souls' yearnings and new inspirations can emerge. And we've been through a lot in this year, 2020, and we have so many reasons to cause us to fear the darkness. We all watched the last 8 minutes and 46 seconds in the life of George Floyd under the knee of his murderer. We have seen videos of families FaceTiming in COVID ICUs to say goodbye in the last moments and breaths of loved ones. We have seen protest and violence in a hurting and a divided nation, while our president tees up another round of golf with no empathy for the hurting nation he leads, no skills, intellect, competency, or even a desire to help heal our nation. We've watched our schools and our churches close their doors, with Zooming becoming a way of life. We've endured economic crisis, job loss, and a pandemic that is not over yet. And life has continued, sicknesses and death, and the pains of normal life that we often deal with in community and have moved to virtual times of support with each other, and most often times of isolation. We have so many reasons to dread the darkness that's coming, except for the solstice, as it comes at the end of the year, is not offering us a time of dread. It's not offering us a time of fear. But if we listen to the earth and we pay attention to the web of existence around us, we may hear the invitation that during the solstice, there is an offering of a time of rest and reflection, an opportunity to turn inward, to heal, to regenerate, and renew our strength. This is the rebirth of the sun, while the seeds of new life lay dormant in the ground, waiting. In Latin, solstice is made of two words, sol, meaning the sun, and sistere, meaning to make stand. Winter solstice is one of the most powerful points of the year as the axis of the earth pauses, shifts, and moves in the opposite direction. Now, I'm not necessarily describing any kind of election that we've experienced as a pause and a shift in the next direction, but I know that our attention is in Georgia these days. But if we pay attention to the earth, winter solstice is the pausing of the earth on its axis. For 3 days around the solstice points, we experience the power of the standstill point and the shift of direction. The sun standing still is a power for the energy available to us at winter solstice to change the direction of our lives with intention and build on this energy as we enter into the new year. After experiencing the longest night and darkest day, the nights grow shorter and the days grow brighter until we get to summer solstice. So for today, let yourself rest in the peace of darkness, knowing that the changing of the season and the return of brighter days is ahead. Be reminded you are always connected to your source, your inner light that never dims. Our chalice burns brightly in each service, reminding us of that inner light that can never dim. But take rest in this pause, in this darkness, this earth's axis stopping, and renew yourself. Let this be a time of accumulating your energy and making decisions about new directions. I invite you to nurture yourself during this season with compassion and empathy and care. And I know often we share so much love and care for each other, but that is directly tied to how much you are able to care for yourself as well. I invite you also to find a ritual that works for you if you happen to be up at 5:02 a.m. this morning. If you need a wake-up call, I have a 4-month-old that can provide it for you. She does about that time every morning. So just let me know and I'll add you to the wake-up call list. But it is suggested that you take about 15 minutes before the actual time of the solstice, about 4:45, and 15 minutes after, to connect yourself and open up to the web of existence around you and think and feel the ways that you want to grow in this new year. This year, 2020, it sounds strange to say, but I invite us all to embrace the darkness of the solstice as an invitation to take a deep breath and rest and exhale all that we have been through. Pause on your internal axis and heal and find your energy for a new direction. I share the words in closing of our poet laureate, as you use, Mary Oliver, who writes a beautiful poem called Snowy Night.